Welcome to Toilets to Titles, Down Under Dynasty, with your host, at Life from the Ben, and with me, as usual, my co-host, at FF Doormat. How are you today, Matt?
But I'm in mourning. I'm feeling a bit sorry, a bit sad, a bit upset. Bit of an instant reaction from Dobbins' knee bump. Um, yeah,
What is your Dobbins exposure? You got a lot of Dobbins. You're very high on him.
yeah. He was my number one with JT coming out of class. I probably had Dobbins ahead of JT, which looks like it's probably an error now. But I think in the passing game he might be a little bit superior. So yeah, for me he was probably my RB one or two from that class. So yeah, got him in a couple of places. I think I got him in Kraken,
Mm-hmm.
and a few other got a few other shares. So a little bit sad. I was lucky enough to be on the clock in the Euro. Actually, I wasn't on the clock. Someone else was on the clock just when it broke, and I tagged him and said you're on the clock, and he didn't pick Edwards. So I was next up, and I grabbed Edwards. So that's sort of twice in that league, in the Euro league. It's a redraft charity league. I was on the clock when the Eddie news broke, so I grabbed Robinson, and then I grabbed Edwards. So pure luck, no planning involved from me. That's fantasy, right? You put all this work in the off season and do all these sort of things, and then sometimes just it's how it breaks for you.
Yeah, those two picks could be league winners. Look, I'm hoping that it just looked worse than what it is, and maybe it's just some kind of, hyperextension of the knee, PCL. Hopefully, there's not too much ligament damage, and maybe he isn't out for the year. That's what I'm hoping. Fingers crossed. If he is, I mean that's two potential stud running backs from last year's rookie class now on the shelf for the year. What do you think this does for Gus Edwards' value?
Look, when I first saw it, I'm not a medical expert, obviously, in any way, shape, or form, but it didn't look super bad to me. Some of them you see them and you don't want to see that replay again, right? So it didn't look that bad, just looked a bit of a bump and didn't look the best. So I'm hoping it's just might miss a few games, 3 or 4 games. I think Dr. David Chow, Pro Football Doc, put a little thing up there and said it's looking like it could be a best case scenario, George Kittle. So he might just miss a month or so, but worst case scenario, it could be a ligament tear and be out for the season. But yeah, look, for me, it didn't look too bad, but who knows? But for Gus Edwards, I think obviously, he had a bit of value already. I think he was going to always cut into Dobbins' workload, and now there's no Dobbins there. You've probably got to move him up. Just depends on how long that injury's out for.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't want to. I just want to wait and see, because I'm really hopeful that it's not that much, and he's just out for a month, like you're saying. If he's out for a while, I don't even know who the third string running back is for
Justice
Baltimore.
Hill, maybe?
Justice Hill, or that Tyron Williams guy.
Yeah. They might even bring someone in, Lev Bell or someone, or who knows.
Gurley did visit there, didn't he, in the off season?
He did, yeah. So, mate, hopefully it's just a few weeks and Dobbins is back and the RB1 there for us all.
Yeah. So, but before we kick off, just want to let everybody know that you can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Podbean, and the Facebook page Toilets to Titles When a Family Breaks, and of course Spotify. And if you're listening to us and you like us, hit the like and subscribe button, and subscribe to the whole suite of Toilets to Titles podcasts for all your football needs in season. We've got a host of shows now on the channel, so it's really exciting stuff. Yeah, get on it.
Dollars to deuces. So deuces is Yank talk for the $2 bill. I recently found out. It's a play on the number 2, obviously, towards the titles, but also deuces is $2. So learn something new every day here at Towards the Titles.
And I've got something new. If you're watching this for the first time or hearing this for the first time, you can join the Towards the Titles Patreon for the first tier at $3 per month. The second tier is $5 per month. And then tier 3 is $10 per month. So the first tier gets you into the T2T group chat. The second tier gets you early access to our waiver wire episodes and entry into Frankenstein League next year. That's full now, chockers, but it'll get you in next year. And the $10 tier will get you one-on-one roster analysis from anyone in the Toilets to Titles team, entry into the group chat, and free entry into the Frankenstein Listen League next year, and early access to the waiver wire episodes. So give that a go. Please give us a try. Don't like it, you can just unsubscribe, but you'll like it. So, Matt, this episode, we were going to talk about the shift in Dynasty strategy as we go from the off-season into the season. So, for yourself, what does that look like? How does your strategy evolve as we head from the off-season through the preseason into the real McCoy?
Well, I think it's just important to have, some sort of direction for your team right about now before the point scoring season begins. And most of my teams, I sort of know which way I'm going to go. For me, I just put it in a spreadsheet. That's the easiest way for me. I just sort of track it, put my strengths, weaknesses in, see where my gaps are, and then see sort of, what the range of outcomes is for my team. Am I a strong contender? Do I have, a good stable? Or do I need a few things to break? If I need a bit of luck and I need this and I need that, then you're probably not really a contender. So I think it's important just to sort of, have that outlook for each of your teams and your leagues, and then go from there. You sort of want to commit to a direction is my take on it. I don't really sell out. I still want to stay a little bit liquid where I can, and not, you don't want to sell all your firsts for a league, and but you want to sort of be targeting those older vets if you're a win now side. And depends on the league makeup too. If you're a single league, it's different than if you're in a multi-copy league or a Devy league. So yeah, if you're a contender, you're probably looking at those older guys. If you're not a contender, then you definitely want to be getting rid of those older vets, and you probably want to be trading them right to another weaker team, just so you're pushing them up, so that 101's getting closer to you. What about you, mate? What's high level? What do you sort of look at? You're just on mute there, Benny.
Sorry, mate. Look, for me, it's just about making, like you said, that honest evaluation of the roster, right? And, making sure that I trust myself and I trust my takes, and it's not just like people talk about state your studs, and one of the mistakes that I would previously make is that I would start my studs, and I wouldn't start the guys who weren't previously studs, but they would be balling out at the start of the season, and it would take me too long to trust them to put them into my lineup. Right. So that's an adjustment that I made sure I made to, get those players who are playing well early in the season into my lineup, because it's a short season, right? Before you know it, it's over.
Yeah.
And then it's making an assessment of the players who are playing and what do I believe and what I don't believe. And everybody talks about, buy low, sell high. But I'm more in the belief, and I think it's easier to buy high. So see what players are coming out and performing. And if I believe in them, pay the price plus, if I have to get those guys onto my rosters. And the guys that I don't believe in, selling them while I can to get them off my rosters if I believe what I'm seeing is legitimate.
Yeah, nice. Look, I like that. You do often hear about, you got to sell these wide receivers before they hit this age, and the running backs before they hit that age. But, if you're a win now roster, if you've got a strong contender who's win now, who cares about value? That's not going to do anything for you, Like Mike Davis is probably a league winner last year, and then the talk was that we should have sold the Green Bay running back, slipped my mind now. But they were never going to re-sign him. AJ Dillon was coming in. We should have sold him, and they still might be right. Like he's still an older running back, but he's just re-signed. And if you're a contender and you sold him to get value, unless you hit a jackpot with that value, you're not going to get those. There's no way you get those points back. So I like that buy high. I sort of I like that approach. Depending on sort of it's team dependent, of course. No point buying high if you're going for that 101. But if you're not, if you're a contender or you're thereabouts, it's a good move to make.
Yeah, and that's the lesson that I learned. I sold Aaron Jones to not this off season, but last off season. So I sold him because I thought he'd peaked, but he had another massive year, and he's still got a lot of value going into this year. And now that he's got that contract extension, he's kind of
I sold him in console wars. I got CeeDee Lamb back. I think I sold Brady and Aaron Jones. I got CeeDee Lamb and a few other pieces, which was pretty good. I think I got Zach Wilson out of it as well. The pick turned into that. But yeah, everyone was telling me sell him, and I sold him. And look, I probably would do it again, I guess, because I wasn't a contender in that league. But if you're a contender, it's going to be hard to get those points elsewhere, really.
And do you try to balance your roster by having some bridge players that are on your team who get production, who aren't super valuable in trades while you're waiting for your young players? Back when I first started playing Dynasty, I'd, be trying to acquire all these young, pretty players, and then you go to start somebody in your wide receiver one slot, and your sexy stud young player who you think is going to be a superstar is producing like a wide receiver 3 for fantasy.
Yeah, look, it's okay if you're going for that 1-on-1, right? Like I say, if you're selling out, then get all these young guys. But JJ Arcega-Whiteside, these type of guys, they're not really going to be any value at all unless they hit massively. So it's a really lotto ticket, right? So you don't want to have all these lotto tickets in your side. You don't want to just base your whole league outlook on winning the lottery. You want to have a few eggs that can hit and a few that are sort of, your Jarvis Landrys and those type of players, dependable players that can still, score your points and a decent wide receivers 3-4, especially if you're there or thereabouts. It's really team dependent, isn't it? Like if you're made a decision to go super young, then you don't want any of those vets. They're not going to increase in value, really. Unless there's an injury to someone or you think you can flip them in season. So maybe you'll grab them in your startup draft. I think that's something that I've sort of started doing more now, where I've gone with a productive struggle in a couple of leagues, but I've seen value there in some vets late, and I've grabbed them purely just because I know in season they're going to probably have a couple of big games and I can move them. Where in the past I've just gone for that lottery ticket, that JJ Arcega-Whiteside or someone like that. That if he does hit, he's going to hit large, but the reality is these vets, they're going to be worth something. Someone's going to need them. There's going to be an injury, or someone's going to have an injury, and you can ship them off for maybe a third or a second, depending where it is.
And from both the point of view of a contender and then also somebody who's rebuilding, what time is there any particular timetable on when you're looking to sell your veterans? Sell veterans if you're not contending, or buy veterans if you're contending. Is there an ideal time frame that you're looking at? Is it, or are you just?
I don't have a hard and fast rule. It just depends on sort of what value you can get back. But you probably want to look at that before they hit that second year contract for your RBs. You want to. For me, it's not nothing new, but you want to draft those young RBs and sell them as they get older. So.
Yeah, I meant it's a bit more like if you were contending and you had a contending team, right?
Yeah.
And you needed, you thought, okay, I like my team. It's good. I can win this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I need maybe an extra wide receiver 2 or a stud running back. Is there a point in the season you're looking to get that player, or are you just looking to get them as soon as possible? And if you have that player but you're not contending, are you how long are you trying to sell him as quickly as possible, or you're holding as a time you think you've got optimal return?
Yeah, so if I'm a win now contender,
Yeah.
like I am in Kraken, I think I'm probably going to go undefeated there. Um, but no, seriously, if I'm a contender, yeah, look, my personal view is just buy him sooner rather than later, because there's probably going to be 3 or 4 contenders looking for that same guy when that final few weeks come. So there is a bit of risk in that. You buy someone, they can get injured. That's just it is what it is, right? For me, I'd rather buy them earlier because I know I've got them and just carry that injury risk. You can pivot in season. Week 10. You can luck your way through and then see who's healthy there and get them. But then maybe the next week they get injured anyway. So for me, I don't really take injury. I just want to get those guys sort of as early as I can, just so I can build that, that redundancy, I guess, in my side, that I've got some guys to pivot around. One injuries, you don't want to come into week 10 and someone's holding, the backup QB and he's going to squeeze you for it, because he knows there's 4 or 5 guys that need that QB and you're desperate, and you're probably going to overpay. That's been my experience. I've done it. I've sort of been desperate. Needed someone. I think I was 8-0 or 9-0 in one team, and I sort of sold out for a couple of backup guys. And buying those vets is good, but if I had done it earlier, I would have paid a lot less, and it would have been so knee jerky. So yeah, for me, especially in a multi copy league, especially in a single copy league, not a multi copy league, especially in a single copy league, you probably want to get those guys a little bit early. Otherwise, you've got 3 or 4 owners that are trying to do the same move, or they make that move and you can't because they've already got them. So, yeah. And as far as selling, I'd probably wait, hopefully until they have a couple of decent games, and then move them. But it just depends on that class. If you've got a clear 101 like Trevor Lawrence, then you just take a loss, get rid of them. But coming up to this year, there's not really. I'm high on Spencer Rattler, but there's no super 101, so I'd probably just try and get that little bit of extra value. And if you end up with a 101 or 102 or 103, not the end of the world, right? You're still getting talent and making value there. So I'd probably just hold him a bit longer. I wouldn't be just trying to push him straight away.
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point there. I mean, yourself and me, we play in leagues where the draft order is determined by potential points. And so in a situation like that, if you're not a contending team and there's a stud 101 like Lawrence or Saquon Barkley, you're probably feeling a lot of pressure to kind of get those points off your roster, right? But if it's a year like this year that you mentioned coming up, that pressure's not, it's probably not there. But if for myself, if it's a older veteran, so for example, like an Adam Thielen or a Julio Jones, I'm trying to get that person off my roster if I'm not contending as soon as possible, just in case I get hurt again or beat up or something of that nature. Whereas, and you said this, and it's not something that you worry about, but I'm trying to, if I feel I'm a contender, a true contender, I'm trying to set my lineups for as long as I can without needing to go out and buy other pieces. Because I feel if I'm a true contender, I should be able to do that. And I don't want to buy that guy, especially for a first. I don't want to spend first round picks for guys that might get injured during the season. If value presents itself either way, as a contender or as a somebody who isn't contending, yeah, absolutely. And if it's seconds or thirds or something of that nature, I'll trade that all day to get a piece that can help my roster right now. But those first round picks, the value just always goes up and up and up, and it's not often that I haven't regretted selling my first round picks, to be honest. just because when the draft rolls around, it's so much fun. That's real. I've got lots of value, but just that side of it, it's always fun to have picks.
Look, it's fun to have picks, and then if you're sitting even at the end of the first this year, if you're sitting at the 112, you can still flip that. You can move up easily and flip it, or you can flip it in season. So yeah, there is that value to be had. But yeah, look, I'm with you. You shouldn't have to give up that first if you're a real contender. That first, selling that first. Yes, it's late, but if you're that strong a contender, you really should be able to pivot and get someone for a second, and then that's these seconds when you're talking about a late second, it's completely different than an early second, in my opinion. Like it's a bit of a dart shot anyway. Early to mid, you can jag these guys, but as you get later, it's pretty tough to hit on these picks. So yeah, I like that. I think if you're a contender, you pivot, you make that move mid-season. That's a strategy that you can do, but don't sell that first is what I'll be doing unless I'm getting a ton of value with it.
Because even as a contender, even though it's a late first, people just see it as a first, and then once the draft, the hype gets so ridiculous for every draft. Maybe that rookie won't help you, but the kind of player you can buy for that first in the hype of draft season is sometimes ridiculous.
Yeah, it's almost always ridiculous. There's someone who's gonna bite on that, and I guess it goes back to knowing your league mates. If you're in a league that never trades, or you got a couple of stingy owners or whatnot there, it might be a bit harder to make that move in season. But if you're in a league that you've got tons of owners that like that trading and like that value, and hopefully you're in those leagues, not the former league, you're in one that's a lot of trade action, then it's probably easier to make that, just to like you said, set your lineup, and then come week 10, week 11, look at what you can do with that second or third.
And as a contender, if you get an injury, are you the type of person who may look to flip that injured player to a non-competing team, right, for a player maybe in a tier below, but still a really good producer? I'm talking like if you got a superstar player who got hurt. So, for a player in a tier below, or adding a draft pick to that player that's hurt to get a player in the same tier. Is that something that you would do?
So what, Travis Etienne, or we're saying like a
like
someone, or
like for example, and I'm putting myself out there to look like a bit of a dickhead, but last year when Saquon Barkley got hurt, I had him on a couple of contending teams, and I flipped him for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Right, in 2 leagues, so that kind of thing.
I don't think that's a terrible move. I think I got offered Barkley for Helaire straight up last year, and I said no, just because of those injuries. But yeah, look, I think so. I think just because he still has that much value, these out and out studs, these Barkleys, these Kamaras, they still hold a lot of value, and they're an older stud too, right, for a running back. It's probably about the time you want to sell him anyway, really, right? Like this is, even if you're selling Barkley now, you're losing a little bit of value there. So. Yeah, I think so. I think if I'm, 1-10 or 9-2 or something, and Barkley goes down and I've got him, I'd sell him for a lesser player, or maybe chuck in a draft pick and get another superstar. But it just depends. If it's a younger stud, I probably wouldn't. If it's Travis Etienne and I'm a contender. I probably would want too much value just because I'm pretty high on Etienne, and I don't know how much he's really going to contribute to my team anyway if I'm a contender. So I'd probably just, you're not going to get a first for him, I think, really. People are going to try and lowball you for him. So unless I can get a sweet deal, like I still want that value. I'm too stingy, I guess, to just give him away. So, that's my approach. What about you, mate? What do you...
Yeah, well, obviously, I'll make that kind of move if I feel I'm a big time contender, because I did last year. It helped me win.
Younger guys, if you got a younger guy who's injured, will you still if you had Akers, would you flip him for a Damien Harris or someone, or a Mike Davis?
If I had a big not Mike Davis, I'd probably flick Akers for Damian Harris, but I really believe in Damian Harris.
Yeah.
I sold Akers when he got hurt for Jaden Daniels, who in Devy League, he's a college quarterback. Just did that. So, I mean, for me, in regards to making that kind of move, I'm happy to make that pivot. I would rather have, like I mentioned, the Saquon CEH move. I'd probably rather have CEH over Saquon right now, just because of that situation. Saquon on the Giants, Daniel Jones still a big question mark. The offensive line still a big question mark. So, if I can trade an injured player for a healthy player in season, and it's not a massive, drop in talent or tier, even if it's just moving down a tier and a half. I'll definitely do that if I'm competing, and I'll definitely do the reverse if I'm not competing. If somebody drafted Travis Etienne in a startup, anticipating that he's going to be a stud, right? I'd offer James Robinson. I might offer James, and I did a productive struggle kind of startup, and I didn't think I could compete. I'd offer somebody like James Robinson for Travis Etienne right now. That's how much I believe in Etienne.
So I guess it's you make those moves when you've got a younger asset that can still ascend, right? Like if you've got someone who's older, there's no way, even if they come back and even if they get back to their full potential, their point scoring potential, their value is not going to increase. Where that Etienne, Akers, there's a path for them where they can come back. They've still got that youth in a decent situation, and they can increase in value again. So maybe that's the smart move.
Yeah, I think that's the smart move. Like Dobbins, if Dobbins is hurt and you're contending, what's the worst running back you would trade for Dobbins? So you're getting Dobbins off your roster because you're a big time contender and you need another running back. What's the lowest running back you would take for him?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm really high on Dobbins, so it'd probably take a JT. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, look. Yeah, I'm not sure. You still want a younger running back, maybe a tier down, and you'd have to be an out and out contender. But if he's out for the year, I don't know. Are you taking Derrick Henry for Dobbins? Was that a move you'd make? I don't feel real good about that move, but he's probably going to be close to the RB1-2 this year.
I don't think you could get that though. I don't think you could take Dobbins in most leagues, an injured Dobbins, and go and trade for Derrick Henry. Not at the start of the year.
Yeah. So then, what's the next tier down?
I'm trying to think.
In between that, a bit higher than Harris, a bit lower than Henry. Maybe James Robinson. Don't feel real good about that either.
I wouldn't feel great. Mixon. I think you'd still see Mixon going above Dobbins. Yeah, but I mean,
chuck something in.
Yeah, you'd probably have to add to Dobbins. Alternatively, obviously you would trade Damian Harris to get Dobbins, right?
Definitely,
yeah.
It depends on your rankings and depends on your league, but that's a good one for. Just trying to. I'm bringing up the rankings now.
Yeah.
Trying to bring something up. What about Eckler?
If I wasn't a contender, I'd probably do something like Eckler for Dobbins.
Would you sell Eckler for Dobbins? If you're
Yep. If I wasn't a contender, I'd probably try. I'd be trying to get Dobbins plus.
Depends how desperate your owners are, right?
Yeah.
So you got Elliott, Eckler, Sanders, Montgomery. Chris Carson. Wow, that feels bad, doesn't it, Chris Carson?
I definitely like Monty, Miles Sanders. They're probably in that tier of player that I would be happy getting for Dobbins if I was a contender and Dobbins is out for the year. I'd probably trade Dobbins for Sanders or Monty.
Would you rather a Dobbins in a first for Antonio Gibson, or Dobbins in a second for a higher tier, or would you just try and take that older, like that tier down, like a Dobbins straight up for Sanders?
I'd probably try and do that straight up. I'd do Dobbins in a first for Gibson because I think Gibson's going to finish like top 3.
Yeah.
So I'd do that. But no, look, I mean, this conversation just started because I was just curious if those are the type of those are the kind of moves that you would look to make, and we've both said that those are.
Yeah, look, both sides of the coin. I like that, especially. It's just a no-brainer if you're trying to get that 101. If you're a productive struggle, just jump on those guys. Obviously, you don't want to involve any picks, but you should be able to sell some of the younger players or the players that are a tier down to get that injured player. Not going to give you any potential points, and they're going to more than likely going to accrue value. As soon as they're injured, they lose a ton of value, right? But as the season goes on and as they sort of start, you see them training out in the field and whatnot, their value is going to come back up again. So.
And going back to what I said before about buying high, if somebody like a T Higgins comes out and has a T Higgins or a Brandon Ayuk, right, and they start the season off with 2 massive games, are you somebody who would then buy those players high? Like, if you believed in the players, would you pay more than what they were currently worth after those 2 games in anticipation that they would be higher, that they'll go higher? Or are you kind of the kind of person who's just going to say, no, that's their value, I'm only going to pay what they're worth right now?
For 2 games, I probably wouldn't. I probably would have, if I believed them, I probably would have made that move earlier. And those 2 games are not going to change my mind because that's just what it is, right? You can have 2 hot games and two poor games. I'd probably be more likely to flip them after those 2 games, but it depends if I'm a contender or not. But more like a Kyler Murray coming into this season, I think he's a good buy high target. If you're talking about buy high, he's proven himself. He's going to be a QB1. Even though he's probably not going to send in value anymore, I think he's a good QB buy high target just because you're definite on him on what you're going to get. And yes, you're going to lose some value buying him, but he's going to produce those points. It's not just 1 or 2 games, It's not just a breakout game and then you might not see it again.
And in season, how do you approach waivers?
Look, I would rather probably wait for a definite hit. I think last year we were in a league and James Robinson was available. He became available mid-year and we both went 100% on our waiver wire budget. I think I put my bid in like a minute before yours, so I ended up getting him. But if you've whittled away $1 here, $2 there, $5 there, you're going to miss that sort of out and out. There's not many of them. And when they are available, it's pretty obvious to everyone. So you want to, for me, I'd rather just hold back those waivers until I know I'm going to get sort of someone who can start every game. And, like say this was in season and Gus Edwards was on your waiver wire, I'd rather save it for that sort of, rather than just trying to take someone who, like a backup player who, Jacoby Myers or someone or something like that. I'd rather just keep all my fab and then have one hit and going all in. That's sort of my approach, and probably because I've just got so many leagues and it's just so time consuming to set them and
So you're not going through all your leagues, seeing who's available on the waiver wire each week and seeing how many points they scored last week. If they've put 2 or 3 games together, you're waiting for that obvious one.
Look, I'll try and pick them up super cheap if I can. A lot of those leagues after your first waiver run, you can pick them up. Free ad drops. I've always found you can get value there. And it might be league dependent too, and just depends on that time. I'm a bit time poor, so I probably haven't got the time to put into it, really. But yeah, that's my approach. I'd sort of I'll have a sneaky look, but I'll try not to knee jerk just because someone's broken out. We'd take an injury for an RB, and then if there's someone's a clear cut backup RB, then I'm probably more likely to jump into that rather than just in season see who scored the weeks. Probably now I'm doing it in all my leagues. I'm looking at who's available now. There's no excuse now not to do it. But in season, you've got that small window. You've got so much happening, and it's just it can be hard to do. What about you, mate? What's your approach?
Look, my approach is I mine the waiver wire constantly. Just looking at who's on the waiver wire, how many points they scored last week, what kind of opportunity they had, who's the starter in front of them. I'm not like you at all. I'm pretty liberal with my fab budget. Just because I find all my leagues have so many roster spots that if somebody pops even a little bit, someone's going to pick them up. So I just want to get that guy on my roster and hope that he's the next James Robinson, because I don't think that finding unless you're someone like Shane P. Hallam and you're scouting and these guys are watching all this film, finding the next James Robinson is really just luck and hoping that you picked him up at the right time and that he's on your team.
Yeah, look, it definitely is luck. There is a lot of luck into it. But yeah, look, it just depends. Like I said, I'd probably rather save it because these guys are going to become available that everyone's going to jump on. If you've got a bit more fab than anyone else, you can outbid them. And it depends. Like if you got the free ad drops afterwards, I'll find you can mine them there. So I'll probably be a little bit tighter in that sense. Sometimes you've got a minimum bid you got to make.
Mm-hmm.
But there's not often you'll get a fab guy that's going to make a difference, massive difference to your team. Anyway, I find apart from these James Robinson type of guys, which is it's not often, is it really?
A lot of time early in the season, I find myself more interested in the players other people are dropping to pick up these players.
Yeah, look, in IDP, definitely you can too, right? If we're talking IDP, then you've got a massive advantage if you can mine that waiver wire, and then the people, the players that are dropping, I think that's a good approach too. That's something you can definitely keep your eye on. Wait a day or two. Normally they're locked for a day or two, and you can skip them back up in that second run. So, yeah.
And is there any kind of particular strategy that you have when setting your lineups? Are you just start your studs? Are you looking intensely at the matchups? The corner who might be on your wide receivers, the defensive line in regards to the running backs, the linebackers in regards to the running backs, the coverage linebackers in regards to the tight ends.
Not really, not that deep. A little bit. Obviously, if you're playing the Rams, it's a bit different if you're playing the Lions, right? So, in that sense, I've got my eye on the matchup. But I'd probably rather start my studs than pick week by week. Who the corner is and who the second corner is, and what like that. I think there's a couple of resources out there which you can tap into, which do that sort of work for you, which I've started to look at this year a little bit. But I've in the past I've probably mostly started my studs unless there is a bad matchup.
Yeah,
what about you, mate? How's your approach?
I think you just have to be careful with that approach because, like too often you roll out your I've had situations where the studs turn over each year, right? And if you're starting a guy who was a stud last year, but all of a sudden he's not a stud anymore, but you're still rolling him out there based off what he did last year, well, then you could be in trouble. And same if you're keeping a guy on the bench who's in the midst of a breakout because you don't quite believe yet. if it takes you too long to make that adjustment, you can find yourself out of the playoffs. Mate, the weeks after weeks, I put Sammy Watkins in my lineup, mate. I need to be continually disappointed.
I think we've all been there with a player or two. I think I had Logan Thomas in a tight end Premium League, and I just slept on him. I didn't start him hardly at all. So look, it can bite you in the backside, but I guess maybe what you see is what you get a little bit. If these guys are producing, maybe the move is to just let them, just add them. But if you've got someone who's born out, I'm not going to take them out of my lineup because they've got a tough matchup. Is probably what I'm saying. If I've got a stud RB and they're facing the number one defense, I'm probably going to leave them in there unless I've got a really sweet matchup. It's not often I'll go super matchup dependent unless you're playing a terrible team.
Just say you've got AJ Brown on your squad and you've got Corey Davis on your squad. And AJ Brown is struggling. He's putting together, 3 or 4 average weeks, whereas Corey Davis has put together 3 or 4 great weeks on the Jets, getting all those targets from Zach Wilson. How long has it taken you to make that shift to take AJ Brown out of your lineup and put Corey Davis into your lineup?
Hopefully you're playing best ball, so it doesn't matter. Look, probably too long. Unless it's injury related, I'm probably just waiting on AJ to have that.
You're just going to keep
game because you can be sure that the minute you take him out, he's going to score 6 touchdowns, go for 4,000 yards, and Davis is going to give you that duck egg. So it's a fine needle to thread, isn't it? Again, if AJ Brown's going, if he's struggling, he's got a tough matchup. But if he's struggling and he's playing the Lions, I'm probably going to leave him in there. I hope he breaks out. But it depends on your love for Corey Davis too. I think would you start Corey Davis straight up ahead of AJ Brown? Would you? Come on.
No. I was just using those 2 players as an example.
Yeah, I probably would. I probably would keep the stud in, but it just depends on the matchup.
I know for guys like us with teams so loaded, we have these issues every week. But I had to use players like AJ Brown and Corey Davis to relate to the average listener.
We're here for the people.
No, look, I was a big just roll out my studs guy for probably too long, and now I take a lot more notice of the matchups and the players they're going to be opposing than what I did previously. Because even a guy who has a massive year, even a guy who has 13 or 1400 yards receiving, he probably has 6 or 7 amazing games, 6 or 7 good games if you're a superstar player, and then a handful of crap games. Or not crap games, but games where he doesn't do that too much.
It depends on the player. It depends on the matchup, right? If you're talking about an out-and-out superstar player that's playing well, then probably don't have to worry about it too much. But if you're talking about a good player, maybe a great player, but not a superstar, and they're going up against Jalen Ramsey, in one-on-one coverage, that's someone I might sit that week if I got a soft option, if I got a Corey Davis versus the Lions or someone like that. Maybe then I might take that approach. But it's got to be that top level, they're facing a really locked down corner or something like that.
Yeah, and if you've got a team that's winning, right, but just winning, and the points scored are not great, you're down, you're in the middle in the points scored. Are you still trying to compete? You're not, as long as you're getting those wins, you're not looking at your roster and saying, "Oh, I'm getting these wins, but it's a house of cards."
No, I've so many times I've had great sides where you get knocked out in the first week. So if you need a bit of luck and you're getting it, just roll with it.
Just roll with it.
I reckon. If you're in and you're getting those final weeks, and it can happen. Maybe you've got a terrible side, but you've got Kamara in your side, and he scores you those 6 touchdowns and wins you the league. So yeah, I think you don't want to be too cute about it. instead of getting the 105, you get the 108 or something like, but maybe you win the league too. So I'd keep rolling with it.
Yeah, so I mean, we both talked about knowing whether you're a contender or a pretender. But if I'm unsure, well, you should try to know. But if I could compete, I'm setting my best lineup every week and trying to win. Right, even if I don't have a monster squad, and I'm only selling my players going in full tank mode if I know if all my players are on the older end and I know that the cliff is coming. If I've got a young, a youngish roster, I'm still starting my guys every week, starting my best squad, trying to win.
Yeah, I'm the same. I like that approach. It's just so many times. I was in a multi-copy league once where you got to choose your opponent. I was second overall out of 72 teams. I chose my opponent. He whipped me, absolutely whipped me. I think it was Peyton Barber scored 3 touchdowns or something like that, and all my players just laid duck eggs. So it happens to everyone, right? So if you're there, just put yourself in the mix, and good things can happen.
Yeah. So, is there anything else that you'd like to talk about in relation to in-season Dynasty strategy?
Just try not to be too knee jerky. I think we can all be a victim of it at times, including to myself. Sometimes you'll get an injury and you make an offer out, panicking. Just take a deep breath before you send those offers out. Just check yourself, take your time, and then approach it. I think sometimes it goes a bit pear shaped if you hurry too much. So that's what I'd say. Just a little bit of caution.
I'll just chime in as someone who bought Todd Gurley last off-season thinking have a revival with the Falcons. Don't spend first-round picks on older running backs, especially older running backs who have bad knees. All right?
We've all been there.
Yeah. So, look, before we let you go, we just want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Primetime Sports Talk, your top source for all major sports content, including DFS, fantasy advice, and great gambling tips. Be sure to head to primetimesportstalk.com to check out their in-depth analysis, exclusive articles, fascinating interviews, and explore the rest of their amazing podcast family. Again, primetimesportstalk.com, your go-to spot for sports content. And please remember, you can find me at Live from the Ben. You can find my co-host, Matt Hatton, at FFDoormat. And, of course, follow the Toilets to Titles handle at Toilets2Titles. Follow all the team. And if you like us, hit the like button and give us an Apple Podcast review. Was there anything else to say, Matt?
Just counting down, mate. Counting down the days. That's it. Real football's just around the corner.
Real football is just around the corner, and we'll be setting these lineups really, really soon. Anyway, ciao, everybody.